My name is Biyi Bandele. I'm the director of Half of a Yellow Sun, which is a movie that I adapted the script, the screenplay from Chimamanda Ngozie Adichie's wonderful book of the same title.
So, Biyi, how did the movie come to be made?
That's a very long story, but a very short version of it is that in 2005 I ran into Chimamanda at a literary event at the British Library in King's Cross here in London, and she told me about this book she was writing, which she said was set to the backdrop of where she said there was a love story in it set to the backdrop of the Biafran War, which happened in Nigeria between 1967 and 1970, and
it was inspired. Her book was inspired by an earlier book by.
Her book was inspired, she told me, by a short story written by Chinua Achebe, a short story called Girls at War, which I happened to have spent the previous 4 years trying to bring to the big screen. So it was quite fortuitous that I ran into her there, and I then read her book a year later, fell in love with it, and sent a copy of it to Andrea Calderwood, who had just produced a movie called The Last King of Scotland. And Andrea loved the book, optioned it, and then we embarked on this very long journey. It took 6 years to make it happen.
Goodness gracious, 6 years, that's a long, long time. So how did you turn the novel into a film script? It's a wonderful novel, but it's got lots and lots of characters. It's got time shifts.
It has. I mean, the thing I say this, the thing with a novel as a form and film, cinema as a form, is that they just don't get on.
Yes.
If you are going to adapt a novel and actually be really truly faithful to it, then you should turn it into a TV series. You should turn it into a television series, because that would allow you to cover absolutely everything. If you're going to make it into a movie, you know that you're going to have to compress. In the case of Half of a Yellow Sun, a book of nearly 500 pages, I had to find a movie that wasn't longer than 2 hours. I had to find a way of telling that story, and I did it by distilling the book to its essence, or my idea of its essence, and I diverged from the book in terms of the structure. In the book, you have a structure where the novel starts in 1960 and then has a flash forward to the late 60s, and then a flash back to the early 60s, and it just goes back and forth. And I decided to write a screenplay that had a linear structure. So we start in 1960 and we go right to 1970 when it ends. I also decided to tell the story from the point of view of the twin sisters in the book, Olana and Kainene, rather than from
Ugu the houseboy and Richard the professor become.
Well, I mean, Richard is there, Ugu is there, but in the book, the story is told from the point of view of Ugu. He's this witness. He's more or less the narrator of the entire book, but I chose to go with Olana and Kainene principally actually because I felt that they were the most dynamic characters in the book. I fell completely in love with them. I had never encountered characters like that, female African characters like that in the movies, never. I have, over the years, encountered many Ugus, and that wasn't a story that particularly interested me. Although he is a very important character in the film that I've made. He really is. He's a witness still. He's the viewer's representative within the story, within the movie.
And very briefly describe the story of the film.
It's simply really a love story set to the backdrop of very turbulent times. It's a story of of two sisters and their lovers and husbands, and unfolding to the backdrop of a lot of quite incredible events happening in 1960 in the Civil War, in the Biafran War.
Yeah. And how did people think about the Civil War, the Biafra?
In Nigeria, it's a contentious issue. For something like 40 years, we had this selective amnesia about it. The war ended in 1970, and immediately after it ended, we embarked on a process called national reconciliation. And what that meant, effectively, was that you just pretended the war never happened, and everyone smiled. And the consequence of that is that we didn't deal with the root causes of the war. We didn't deal with any of those problems, and because of that, Nigeria is today, in my opinion, more divided than it was before the war.
Yes.
And I feel that we really need to deal with this thing. It's not even in our history books. It's not on the curriculum.
Yeah.
And
history is not much talked about in Nigeria.
No.
It is almost a place without history.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're completely right. I read actually somewhere the other day that because of a shortage of history teachers, history as a subject has been taken off the curriculum. I hope it's a joke.
Yeah. So do you hope the film will, in a sense, open up that discussion?
It will. I mean, I hope in a good way. Nigeria is a very divided country right now, and it cannot go on that way.
Yeah. Okay, so how was the film financed?
We raised 80% of the money was raised in Nigeria. It was made for about $10 million, and we had the backing of the British Film Institute, 20%, but it was a very, very crucial 20%.
And in Nigeria, you got a loan from the.
Not me. I directed the movie. My producer, my wonderful producer, Nigerian producers, Yewande Sadiku and Mukhtar Bakari.
Yeah.
They got some of the money from the loan, but also raised money from private individuals, about 40, 50 individuals.
Yeah.
So it was a movie that was almost, you could say that it was funded by a form of crowdsourcing.
Right. At a high level.
Yeah.
How has the film gone down? You've just got back from Australia where it's opened. How are people receiving it?
We got, in all the major papers in Australia, we got 4 stars. We got really incredible reviews. Thomas Kennelly, who wrote the book, Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List was based on, did 2 Q&As with me. He saw the movie twice. He really, really loved it, and that helped because he was quite vocal about loving it. And I've been on the film festival circuit since September last year when it opened in Toronto. I've seen it in Toronto, in Kerala, India, in Dubai, in Dublin, Glasgow, in Gothenburg, all over the world and everywhere.
So when's it opening in Lagos?
It's opening on the 12th of April next week, the day after it opens in London.
Yeah.
And the logistics, we basically...
So what are you showing at Silverbird?
Yes, either Silverbird or the other main cinema on the island. And I will be traveling to Lagos for that.
And what's your next project?
It's quite possible. I'm talking to 3 different producers right now about 3 different projects, and I'm also talking to MTV Base about the 4th series of Sugar. I directed.
You did the 3rd series?
I did, yeah.